All right, so we are here for episode 2 of Quarantine Conversations. I am with Cole Noppenberg, who is a producer with Austin Public, and he is currently, before the shutdown, was doing a show called Love Carousel with a few other producer friends of his. So, Cole, how's it going?
Pretty good. I had come to Krakow, Poland, and I was preparing to go to Copenhagen to film a documentary short. Uh, and with the lockdown, I'm here in Poland. I'm staying with Mirka. We've been having a good time. I've been trying to retool my efforts to cover some of the procedures and risk mitigation choices that the hospital has made in light of the pandemic. Um, Poland is interesting in light of the pandemic. They had extremely low numbers. They were at about the time that everybody was locking down, they were in the low hundreds. But we have just passed 10,000 active cases or 10,000 confirmed cases here, albeit that's a lot lower than any of the neighboring countries, or at least Germany and Austria. And there weren't a ton of deaths to date. I want to say in the low, maybe in the 400s. So it's been interesting. I came here with a ton of film gear and with the intent of following up the scuba diving documentary that I did with the Beasleys a while back. But Love Carousel, thanks to your help, I've been using OBS to stream for Love Carousel. So I'll play some things from guest appearances, and I'll play music live and talk a little bit. Love Carousel crew is eager about another season, so we're hoping that the studio will open back up eventually. Um, yeah, I don't know. How are things there, Doug? What have you been doing? I saw the episode with Big Daddy G, and that was really cool to tune in and see what they've been up to.
Yeah, we've been doing. So I've been teaching classes with a setup here. I'm in my guest bedroom in my house in South Austin, and got a camera and a couple light kits. And I've been teaching orientation and media policy. Just did that last night on the April 21st, and that's been going well. And then I just wanted to see how the producers were doing. I know that everybody's at home, obviously dealing with might be personal connections to COVID or family. There's a lot of really sad things happening, and so I just thought I was just curious to see how people were staying creative. I definitely have interests in After Effects and Photoshop. I used to do a lot of 3D animation, and I've been doing a lot more of that now that I haven't been at the station and managing Austin Public, and so it's been fun on my end to be more creative. It's been a lot of late nights, but I just thought it would be fun to check in with you all and see how you've stayed creative as well. So I guess I had a couple questions based on what you talked about. So it might be a shock to some people that know you that from the station that are watching this that you are in Poland. So what is there a shelter in place order there as well, or what is the day-to-day life there where you are?
Yes, the borders were closed mid-March, and there is a shelter-in-place order that they've only relaxed this past Monday. So they've relaxed it to the extent that you can be in public for non-essential reasons, but you have to wear a face mask, maintain 2 meters of distance. Most of the public transit is refraining from being full. You're expected to sit in every other row on a tram or a bus. Um, but they have decided that it's okay for now, or they're experimenting with restaurants doing takeaway, or as many as 4 people per checkout lane. It seems like most of the developed world is in lockstep on this stuff, or at least they're taking everyone else's choices into consideration, and so Poland is doing the same. Poland's been lucky with the low number of cases. They have reopened the forests and parks so that people can jog. But up until this Monday, you were not expected to be traveling for non-essential reasons. And rightly so. I see Poland as extremely scared of the virus, and the people have been very compliant in being cautious and observing the advisories of the WHO. And yet the virus is spreading, or at least more and more cases are coming to light. So there hasn't been an extreme fall off on the number of cases. Testing has ramped up, so that may be one of the factors. It's hard to discern. But in general, Polish people were not engaging in a ton of travel leading up to this pandemic. They were the majority of the population is not traveling a ton. The earliest cases that were documented and confirmed were folks that had gone. There was one fellow from Krakow, or came back to Krakow, who had been skiing in Italy and came back and was on the verge of death very quickly. So Poland has taken it very seriously despite having some of the lowest numbers in the area.
So do you want to talk to a little bit about what you're using right there to create the effect that I see with the TV?
Yeah, so that's all OBS. And OBS will let
So talk a little bit about OBS.
OBS is open source software. It's the open source broadcasting software, OBS Studio. And in order to send to something like a webcam like this, you can add an open source plugin, and it shows up as a tool that sends it as a camera. So instead of the normal laptop camera, I'm passing everything through OBS. So I can apply anything. I can apply a LUT, a lookup table that changes the colors immensely. So for instance, I can make the image of a television that's flashing. I can change the color like this. You know, the kind of equipment that's in the studio that costs so much, but a laptop with some open source software for less than a tenth of the price, you can at least train up. So I think this is a great way for producers and crew to get hands-on experience while we're out of the studio. And I think that when the Love Carousel crew comes back to the studio, it's gonna be quite a reminder of how valuable the studio is, and a chance to use some of the things that we've developed at home. So we'll see. But yeah, it's exciting for me because I used to watch, there was a time when Squiggle Vision had a few shows. They were usually a handful of comedians and some very low-res animations. Well, that's all. You could do all of that from OBS. So I think it's a real powerhouse and something that I'm going to be spending a lot of time with.
How are you right now interacting with Love Carousel fans, if at all?
I guess we tell them what's going on, the fact that we're out of the studio. We have a dedicated email address for the show, and a lot of the regular watchers directly text me. And so I get a little bit of feedback, especially if the send is choppy from here. People are telling me as it streams. That's in terms of our audience that used to come in for the shows and things like that, it's unfortunate that we're going to have to rebuild a lot of that, and we're going to have to find ways to keep it interactive with folks. We're not doing a lot of live stuff yet, but I think once the rest of the crew can engage in that, just before the lockdown, the crew of Love Carousel was filming some remote locations. They had gone to a lineup at a house party, something that we had promoted and were able to film. So we have some experience shooting in the field. But with the current advisories, there's not a lot of that going on. You could do some private parties and make them shows for Love Carousel. But anyway, we do hear from folks via email, via text, and at least know whether or not they're watching.
So what's when you get back to the States, what's going to be your first sit down meal at a restaurant? What restaurant?
I would love to get back to Austin for Titaya on North Lamar to be open. And I would sit down and have I can't pronounce it right, but it's yum nur. It's sort of a steak salad. So that's my favorite restaurant in Austin by far. And the things they
what
do
kind of
with
food?
herbs. It's Thai. It's a Thai restaurant. It's right in front of the Half Price Books on North Lamar. Fantastic. That would be. It won't be the first meal when I get back to the States, but it'll be the first one I'm hoping for.
Yeah. That you're looking for. Yeah. Yeah, I would say mine was going to be probably Chewy's, but we just my wife and I just did takeout for Chewy's fajitas over the weekend, so it maybe have to be something else. I haven't had Thai food in. I don't think I've had Thai food during the stay at home, so that might be. We have a Madam Mam's right down the street. There's a couple food trucks as well here in on Brody, South Austin, so that might be something I do this weekend. Yeah, because that sounds pretty good. Do you think you'll eventually have to give yourself a haircut?
I've been doing a little self-maintenance. I can see, you've been, you were well ahead of the beard craze of the pandemic, Doug, but I know that maintenance can be very difficult. I think we're going to see a lot of long hair fashion come into play at this point. I think that the pandemic is sort of like the 70s oil crisis. It's going to bring back a lot of style. I think collars are going to get a lot bigger. I think that people are going to think that maybe corduroy isn't too hot for Austin. But in terms of facial hair, I don't know, man. My rule when I could easily maintain it, I mean, I didn't travel with, I don't know. For me, if you get to where you're maintaining it more than... I don't know what to do. I think that I think I can work a mullet. I think there's a lot of attention on the hairstyles of exotic animal collectors, and that when general style and circumstances allow you to really let something that you're already akin to flourish, like when if you want to go shaggy, this is the time to do it. I don't know, because the problem I have is that everything south of the equator grows 5 times faster. So I end up with sort of a periphery that you really don't, it doesn't convey professionalism in general. I think
I can't have this and also have this. I can't do both. It's either I can grow this out a little bit longer and then I have to shave my beard. This used to be me maybe a year and a half ago, but I've had a beard since 2005, I think. So I think, yeah. So I've had the beard before. I think it got, really popular with kind of the hipster crowd. But yeah, I've just been letting this grow, and then I've been doing pretty good trying to maintain the top of my head. But I could, for my standards, I could probably use a haircut. I usually go once a month, so. But all right, so I heard you make a reference to Tiger King. So what shows have you been watching from Poland?
I'm lucky that my Criterion subscription lets me log in from here, and so I went through everything that Jean-Pierre Melville has on there. Everything that they put up by Melville out of France. I just watched the first half of Ball of Fire with Gary Cooper. I guess I'm watching a lot of old stuff. I have not actually watched any of Tiger King. I just kind of surf the memes enough to know.
You can't avoid it.
Yeah, I mean it seems to be very popular. What my usual rule of thumb is to shelf anything that people are talking about, wait 5 years, see if it really holds up. But I mean, it worked for The Wire, right? I watched The Wire at least 5 years late, and I
did too. All the technology was super old when I watched The Wire, but I still loved it.
Even in the writing, the technology was about 10 years behind. He was writing about stuff that he observed in the 90s, and he made it fit. So it was relevant, but it was even at the time of airing. But to date, I think that's the best show in television history. I can't think of any. I mean, maybe in the psychedelic 60s, I think that The Prisoner was a pretty good show. But for me, The Wire just covers it all. I've been a Law and Order fanatic. So anything current I'd like to dip into. I don't really like the way documentary is presented in a lot of these trends, but maybe Tiger King would appeal to me. I don't know. I didn't even really follow the serial, right? This is like a post serial thing because there's a certain element of mystery over how the guy died. I'm speculating. I could probably make up some names, but they would all sound like people that knew Jeffrey Epstein at this point. So I don't know. I'm chain smoking a lot more of the politics. So I'm listening to a lot of the posturing that's going on with bailouts or bail-ups or however you want to portray the enormous amount of cash that's being thrown around in the name of medical, paying for disposable masks theoretically or stimulus checks with a picture of our leader on them, I guess. I don't know. So that's taken the place of a lot of. That's why I haven't seen Stranger Things season 2 or 3. So.
Gotcha. Well, I'm on the flip side of that. Yeah, I've gotten, I don't know, I guess just tired of reading all of the politics and all the stories, and I've kind of stopped checking the numbers of people who have it. I occasionally I check in maybe every few days, but there was at one point I was doing it every day, and one of the memes that I saw that really hit home, and I kind of stopped checking everything every morning was I guess it was Captain Luke Picard of Star Trek. You know, it was like it was him at the helm, and it just said damage report, right? And I feel like that was my morning. Was I'd wake up and I'd be like, damage report, and you just have to find out everything that's happening around the world. And I don't know, I've got COVID fatigue, I guess. So now I'm just hoping that everything opens up soon so I can get back to normal. I wake up and you're the first person I've talked to all day. So my wife is essential at an essential business, is up and out at 7:30 in the morning. I wake up, I walk the dog. I started talking to my dog a lot more. So I'm at home all day alone, and I'm ready to get back to some sort of
haircuts and fashion checks aren't going to be the only rehabilitation we need. It's going to be interesting because what'll happen is I'll get through to somebody, and of course I'm dealing with the time difference as well, but I'll get through to somebody back in the States, and I'm just gushing with energy to talk with them because I've been in the house alone working on software or some garbage that doesn't actually involve much interaction, right? So that's a big factor. I think that we're all having a big reality check on how much we need each other, and yet how much we compromise each other in terms of a pandemic like this, a full-on plague. And what I think is beautiful is that everybody is realizing that you don't have to commute every day. You don't have to pollute the atmosphere as badly as you do. If anybody were to actually embrace ride sharing, car pooling, all the things that could save the globe over the course of the next 50 years, now's the time to take a check and say, hey, we can do it. Granted, when the price of oil is going negative, or at least the futures price, it does kind of make you wonder if there's an angle to stashing some barrels in your backyard for a while. I vividly remember the mortgage crisis, and I don't know what we're in for, but I think that this dwarfs the mortgage crisis and how much of an economic impact it's going to have. I just think that the wheels don't turn as quickly. I remember the mortgage crisis, the news was talking about it for almost 2 years before it really had an impact on everything and shipping ground to a halt. So I don't mean to say this with doom. I am looking at how I can prepare for not being able to walk down and get a latte every morning. We're already there. It may not be, even if things resume, even if we're back at the station, I think that there are going to be some repercussions.
Is there just kind of on all of that, is there an organization that you would want to give a shout out to, or that, if anybody's thinking about donating money to the cause that you have, that you have a connection with, or you'd prefer people donate to?
I mean, I really regret that as a nation we're not funding the WHO in the same way. But because they have collected a lot of information for the U.S. and Europe, and they've been advising as best they can as the situation develops. So that's one angle. I think it's a good time to get closer to Greenpeace because the things that they've been doing for so long make a lot of sense. It's no secret that I was very heavily supportive of Bernie Sanders, who was campaigning on Medicare for all, or on healthcare for all, right before a pandemic. So a lot of that campaign has retooled towards donating to charities, and they identify small charities on a weekly basis that people can donate to. But I have been impressed with what Greenpeace is doing in terms of communication campaigns. So they've been doing remote classes. They've been fostering people who can talk on social media about how critical it is. I myself am not a vegetarian, but would as many of these viruses jump to humans if more of us were vegetarian? I don't know. It's something to look into. I think that if you can help people in your immediate community, that's the most important thing. There are plenty of, what's going on at the Arch right now? What's going on in any of the places that are helping people that don't get a stimulus check because they didn't file taxes, because they didn't have a direct deposit to put it in? These people don't make the news, and they might be dying of the coronavirus at a lot higher percentage and not be immediately tallied. But no, I would say Greenpeace is a good place. I would say that if you can help people in the immediate community as well. But I don't know. My belt's pretty tight right now. I'm not donating in ways that I did before. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Keep your own oxygen mask on first.
All right, so just kind of pivoting back into the Austin Film Society world and Austin Public, what would you say that you're looking forward to the most to getting back into Austin Public?
There isn't a place. It's very evident we're consuming a lot more media now. There isn't a place for the population of Austin to tell their side of their daily story that compares to Austin Public. Anybody can come in from the community, take a number of classes, and you share their thoughts on life, share their art. I've been lucky to do a lot of that over the last couple years. And when I talk to people about it, it's been transformative for me. So if I know people that are artists, I'm telling them, find a way to get involved. I've brought in a lot of artists, especially musicians. And so to have access to the studio is something that I used to do. I used to do recordings in studios, and it's extremely expensive. The professionals involved are under a lot of pressure to make money that justifies the equipment they have. And all that's true for Austin Film Society and Austin Public, but we have a charter that represents the populace, and it's something that's been in place for decades. And so I think more of the public should be using that. I think that there's such a diversity of perspectives, beliefs, and it doesn't all fall into two political parties. It doesn't all fall into musicians in Austin, although they're important to represent. It isn't all the rap scene, although they're important to represent. There are people that can teach classes on how to sew, and maybe that's something that's really important right now, because you can't go to the shops that you used to, or the tailors that you used to use to mend your clothes and go on. So Austin Public serves as a front line of community education in a lot of ways. And I'd like to see more of the community doing that. So if there's a point where we can get back into the studio, that takes away a lot of the prep work that people don't learn outside of the studio. In the last 2 years, I've learned more about production than, I didn't go to a school that, a lot of high schools when I was young, a lot of high schools had fancy video programs, but I didn't go to a school that had one. I met people that did go to those schools, but I grew up watching television like a fanatic. I grew up in Miami, Florida, and we had UHF channels, which were absolutely unrestricted. They were insane, and they would play movies that no 11-year-old should have seen, and yet I watched them, and I watched them on a 13-inch screen that was fuzzy, that if you held your hands right, if you hugged the television properly, the reception was great. And if you didn't, you got all sorts of weird, ghosting and V-hold issues and stuff like that. So I saw stuff, and very quickly my perspective became, how do I analyze the story that's being told, and how do I understand the techniques that are involved? So despite the fact that I had never really worked in video, I'd worked in radio quite a bit. But when I walked into Austin Public and looked at the equipment, I pretty much understood everything that was going on and wanted to mess with every piece of equipment in there. And so if there are other people that have that passion, I mean, people absolutely love film, and public access television is a great place to get an initial understanding of how studio work works, and what you benefit from having a lighting grid, and what you benefit from having trucking dollies underneath your cameras. So I can't imagine a better place to learn how to put an image together, because if you ask me, when I started making films, editing films, it was around 2010. I was running and gunning in public arenas in front of the Capitol in Austin, Texas, because I could always interview people in front of the Capitol. I was working on a lot of things that were political. I was working on a documentary that was about public broadcasting and the threats that constantly reemerge to defund them. Like, it's one of the first things that should go when you need to tighten a budget. And anybody I talked to in that time period, most of them had grown up watching Sesame Street, and so I could interview them about Sesame Street. I could interview them about PBS, and I learned how to tweak audio and footage in the field. But I think if I had a firm basis on lighting that you get in the studio, it would have benefited a lot of the things that I was trying to do, and I know it does now. So I'm grateful for having discovered Austin Public, and I urge people to get involved.
Awesome. Yeah, I kind of gave my background last episode on Big Daddy G Show, but I think, we've talked about it too. I don't have a film background, and I discovered Austin Public in 2007 and never looked back. And I think, it's been an education for a lot of people that have found it. And that's why, we see each other often at the station at Austin Public just because of doing your live shows. But I think, I've really, on a personal level, I've kind of definitely, I connect better with people who I see myself in. And you were definitely one of those. Tyrone, last week I interviewed, just kind of seeing people find this and kind of find a home without the formal education, which Tyrone does, with UT. But I think, a lot of people will admit that even with that education, they've learned a lot more, and at least a lot more hands-on experience and real world experience at Austin Public. So awesome. Well, yeah. I've got a meeting to go to, but any closing thoughts, any other questions, comments, anything you want to get out there?
I think everybody involved in Love Carousel is eager to get back into the studio. So I hope that things do reopen, as you mentioned, quickly. I hope that we have a grip on tracing people that have the virus, because I miss going into the studio. That's the highlight of my week. And if things don't improve, I won't be able to fly back from Poland. So I'll be doing a lot of correspondence from here. So I'm looking forward to seeing you soon, Doug, whenever that may be.